man-to-man, one-on-one coverage because the safety rolls to Jefferson's side.
This guy's like becoming like a circus act. Like he could do this.
Von Rock caught a ball with his thighs. We didn't even talk about that.
It was more of with his ass.
If he throws a good ball, this is a running, catching touchdown untouched.
To become who we want to be as individuals, and at the end of the day, that's going to help us be a successful offense.
Like, KP does like these flips after every win, and I'm like just waiting for him to do his flips.
You can tune in anywhere that you guys follow us on social media.
Shout out to Jalen Ramsey. He sucks.
Welcome to the Practice Squad podcast. My name is John. I'm joined by my co-host Mark. OTAs are in full swing, which is pretty exciting, or at least mildly exciting when it comes to football.
You can't get too into the highs and lows of OTAs. It's too early to tell. It's cool seeing some veterans and stuff show up, but I mean, most of the veterans, you know what they can do already, and then like the rookies are just kind of proving that they're not awful.
Yeah, and like I get that. I think what hypes me up, at least as a Lions fan, is just seeing how many vets are actually showing up to OTAs. And to me, that's just like a team brand, team mentality kind of thing. Where, as you said, like these guys are professional athletes, they're vets. Do they really get that much out of showing up to OTAs? No. But as far as like where their headspace is at, and I think like their competitive nature, the fact that they are willing to show up, get those extra reps in, kind of meet some of their new teammates, because Lions especially made a lot of moves in free agency. I'm personally excited about that just because I think it kind of lends to the whole like Dan Campbell brand, the whole Detroit grit situation. So
I think you're seeing more teams kind of have that mentality. It's not just Detroit. I mean, the Jets, Rodgers is involved. It seems like all those new guys are there.
Right.
The Bills, you've seen some of those guys that sometimes you'd wonder, hey, are they going to show up? And they're there. So it just seems like it's kind of becoming a more normal thing for guys to want to be there and show face, start building chemistry. And it's better than being on a boat somewhere on vacation and just like you're just doing your own thing and you just walk in during camp.
Totally. Look, man, you either get better or you get worse every day. And I get a lot of these guys, train by themselves in their home states or, wherever they live in the off season. But at the same time, I guarantee you those reps are not as good as the reps that you're getting with your teammates, with your coaches, all of that stuff. Like
it's corny, but it's true. Like
no, I mean, seriously, you remember summer workouts, even in like high school and stuff like that. Like, when 2 days started, it was very obvious the guys that were training by themselves that, show up maybe a little rusty, and the guys that were, running absolute gasser sprints 5 days a week for an entire 3 months. Like there was a clear difference in those guys showing up. And sometimes the guys that, hung out during the summer were able to catch up just fine. But why would you want to put yourself in that position? It's a very competitive sport. And as you know, it's a game of inches. Every little bit counts, right? Because that is the difference between maybe, winning one of those reps that ends up winning a game. So, as far as NFL goes, there's pretty much that, and there's league meetings going on right now. So we can kind of talk about, there's three motions that ended up passing. Two of them are pretty controversial and took, it seems like a lot of, let's say, lobbying efforts from Mr. Goodell in order to get passed, but they did pass.
Favorite, Roger.
Yeah. Oh, huge fan favorite. One of the most loved people in all of sports, really.
He's so hated, it's almost like honorable.
It is. He's a president, right? Like he's truly a politician for the NFL.
Yeah, but like some people, like even most presidents, like are at least polarized. Like a lot of people will love them and a lot of people will hate them. Like no one likes Roger Goodell except for the owners. It's the only people that like him. It's like there's like 20 guys that like him.
He's super good at being a human shield for all of the garbage that is thrown. I mean, he could have been an actual politician when he got subpoenaed in Congress or whatever, and he had to like go and like speak and got drilled with questions for like an hour straight and managed to say absolutely nothing in all of his answers for an hour. Like that is true politician.
Dude, the Barstool story with him is insane. I don't know if you're familiar. Like he claims he doesn't know who Dave Portnoy is. He's like,
right.
I've never heard of him. It's like, and then he's like under oath in court saying that he's never heard of Barstool Sports. It's like, really? Then why is he banned from going to the Super Bowl? Why did you have him escorted out of a Super Bowl game? Like you never saw those. You didn't see those guys get arrested for sitting in the office and boycotting Tom Brady's suspension. You've never heard of them. You've never seen anything. Do you live under a rock, Mr. Goodell?
And he's like, yes, I do.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I've never
He's just a punching bag for the organization. And I think he honestly. I think there's a part of him that enjoys that role. Like, I think he legitimately enjoys just like being the sponge of all of the hate that is thrown towards the NFL.
Yeah, he gets hated as much as like Hitler, and he didn't kill 6 million people. It's pretty hard to do.
I know the internet is chock full of, okay, we're on this like conversational rabbit hole, and then all of a sudden there's a Hitler comparison, but
dude, he gets hated like literally like he's killed millions and millions of people.
Oh man, that's a stretch that I don't know if I can join up with you on, but I will say he's a very hated man.
Dude gets booed everywhere he goes, everywhere.
Anyways, so to these motions that passed, first one is the third QB rule, which is the non-controversial one. Essentially, it means that teams can keep a third quarterback on their roster that does not count as a part of the 53-man roster that dresses for a game. He can only play if the first two quarterbacks they're starting ahead of him are injured. I think consensus is this is a good rule. It makes perfect sense. Doesn't really affect the gameplay at all, except, when Brock Purdy breaks his arm or whatever, and in the NFC Championship.
49ers would be in the Super Bowl had this rule been installed a year prior,
don't know, man.
In my opinion.
I think Philly was playing a better game, but it's tough to say. I do agree that it would have been a significantly more competitive game at the very least.
The Niners were driving, and I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll never know. But now that the rule's there, it's a good thing.
Definitely. Okay, these next two, I would say this next one is hated mostly by coaches and special teams players, and then I'd say the following one is universally hated. The first one is 25-yard touchback. So on a kickoff, if it's a touchback starting at the 25, what this is trying to encourage people to do is to not try to run it and just take the freaking touchback.
They're trying to take that collision out of it because it's one of the more dangerous plays in football. It's the and I hate to say it, but I've heard some people say it's the pussification of football. Okay, that's what I've heard as a slant. It's like they're trying to soften the game, take the high collision plays out, try to make it as safe as possible. And I get it. It's a dangerous play. Being on the front line in a kick return and having to retreat 40 yards, set yourself, and have someone who's running full speed at you head on and try to block him it's dangerous. But it's part of the game, dude. Some of the most exciting plays in history have been these kick returns or on,
that's exactly it. And by the way, it's a 1-year rule, so it's kind of like a test pilot, but we know how those things tend to go in the NFL. Yeah. That's probably going to stick. But there's two things that I have this kind of like a counter argument to this. One, if you're applying that logic to a kickoff, you should be applying that logic to like punts too, because punts are very field position based, and they're not going to, but they're very similar high collision plays. I can say the hardest I've ever been rocked on a football field is during a broken punt play, and I did not see somebody coming to block me when I was going to make a tackle.
Yeah. And they took those because they took the blindside block out, John. That's why punts are safer now. They took that when you got blindside. I know what play you're talking about. I couldn't ever forget seeing that.
Yeah, I got made fun of forever JV year for that.
But that was in today's game. That's an illegal hit. So like they already kind of changed the punt return game where you can't blindside block people.
But the field position and all of that stuff, I think that like if you're applying this logic to a kickoff where it's like, okay, we're just trying to give you favorable field position, man, like punts are all about field position, right? It's the entire reason the play exists is that it can completely change the field position situation for the team starting their drive. And then the other thing that I have to say, and this is what most players are complaining about, and I completely agree with them, is if this is all to avoid lawsuits or player safety or stuff like that and concussions and whatever, why are we not having a more serious conversation about the grass versus turf rule? Because they're saying, well, there's statistics here, like a kickoff play, a player is 15% more likely to get a concussion than any other football play. Those statistics are debated, but let's say that's true. That holds up, right? 15% more likely to get a concussion. It's been proven that on turf, players are significantly more likely to tear their ACL or have a non-contact injury that usually involves a ligament in their leg, which it takes you out for the season 9 times out of 10. It's usually 9 to 12 months in order to fully recover from one of those. So why are we not having a similar discussion about the turf that's used versus grass if we're having a serious discussion about kickoffs? And I think that's very valid, right? Like if player safety is really what you guys are worried about, I would think, not saying it's right or wrong, right? They're both serious injuries, but I would think most players are equally as concerned, if not more concerned, about blowing out their knee than having a concussion. So
I just think I mean, and I'll die on this opinion, but you get paid millions of dollars. You know what you signed up for. You've played the sport your entire life. You've been banged up. You've had non-contact injuries. You've had concussions. You've whatever, right? Like it's a known thing that could happen to you. And you know that when you sign up to play this game, and especially when it's your profession, like it is what it is. It's a violent sport. It's what makes it so great. It's what makes millions of people watch you every Sunday.
Right.
If you don't want to be a part of that, fine, don't. There's plenty of people that would kill to be in their position.
Right.
I would kill somebody to be in that position right now. And I don't care if I get hit in the head or if I die on the field or whatever. Like if I'm living my dream doing what I wanted to do, I'll take those odds. I will take those risks that I'll have CTE or that I'll have ACL injuries and have to try to okay, cool.
And that's not to say that we shouldn't be doing things to try to make the game
right. No, I get that, but you got to be careful.
Right, because then it's okay. Are we making the game more safe, or are we altering the fabric of what makes football a sport, right? In order to try to protect players.
Like John, I'm with you. Like playing grass and turf, right? You could debate that all day. I'm cool with that. But when you start taking key pivotal plays out of the sport, like a kick return,
right?
I mean, you might as well do what the XFL is doing and just have them line up 5 yards apart and just make it another offensive play.
And they're not even doing that for player safety. They're doing that because they know that the kicking and special teams in a semi-pro league is going to be horrendous. You might as well kind of try to do what you can to get.
Well, yeah, that and it's a little bit safer having them 5 yards apart, trying to it's like offense and defensive line basically, rather than running from 40 yards apart and just high speed collision. So I just. To me, it's like just leave it as is and just, don't change the game too much. I'm starting to see it scares me.
20 yards is damn good field position if you're going to take a touchback anyway. So
I know. It makes it even harder for defense. Yeah, I mean, it makes it harder for defenses again. It just seems like the league continues to try to make, offensive football have an advantage. I feel bad for defensive coaches and players, honestly, in today's game. It's like, what are you supposed to do? Every new rule goes against you. All the targeting rules, you can't touch the quarterback basically anymore. There's no more. You can't pin people deep on kick returns. It's just making it harder and harder and harder. I mean, pass interference is you basically can't touch the guy. It's gotten really challenging to be a defensive player or a defensive coach in today's game. And that's scary because, I miss the days where the final score was 14-10 and it was just like a hard fought game and scoring points was hard.
Well, and I agree with that. I always enjoyed myself a good defensive game as well. But unfortunately, the NFL fan base has very different opinions about that. Right. And that for better or worse. Right. Because I'm with you. Like, if there's games where every single drive is a stalemate, and it's not because the teams stink, but it's because there's a lot of hard-nosed defense being played and guys are just playing gritty freaking football. I personally love those games, depending on the context, but that's not what's happening here. It's just, people are immediately attribute low-scoring games to, these teams stink, right? And they're not showing the fact that, no, there could just be good defensive ball being played. So
that's the football that's the kind of football that made football what it is today. That's why it's so loved. I mean, it was the big hits. It was the stalemate games. It was every possession mattered because if you scored, that's why soccer is so gigantic when you score. It's because it's so hard to score. So when someone finally scores, you're like, holy shit, we're gonna win, right? The points touchdowns and field goals. It's just we scored. We'll probably score another 5 times.
And a lot of the time, though, defenses are pretty gassed by the fourth quarter, regardless of what happens the other 3 quarters. So if you're waiting for exciting offensive plays, you can still 100% get that. The first thing that pops into my mind, this game will probably be fresh in our memories forever, was KC versus Bills. 2 years ago. I mean, one of the most ridiculous fourth quarters I think I've ever seen in my entire life. Wasn't there something like 30 points scored in just that quarter alone?
It was in like under like 3 minutes. It was ridiculous.
It was insane.
It was crazy.
It was like 4 touchdowns and, like you said,
right,
like 3.5 minutes or something like that. It was absolutely ridiculous, and we still get those moments all the time. So, and like you said, Mark, like, you know, there's guys in the armed forces that aren't just putting their bodies on the line; they're putting their lives on the line
and get paid jack shit.
Yeah, exactly. Get paid maybe 5% of what some of the lowest paid NFL players get paid. And you don't see similar narratives about the UFC or boxing where guys are literally kicking the shit out of each other.
And that's what makes those sports, like, just admit what it is. Stop trying to be something you're not. We're not soccer. We're not basketball. This is football, man. If you want to go do those sports and play a safer role, you want to go be a professional golfer, whatever you want to do, there's plenty of safer options if you want to pursue that athletic professional career. If you're scared of these injuries that are potentially going to happen to you and happen at a higher rate in football than other sports, then don't sign up for football. There's plenty of people that will love to take your place.
Not to mention, football is by far and away the safest it has ever been in the history of the sport.
Yeah, I just worry that they're trying, they're I think it's at a really good spot now. And honestly, it's a little too soft right now. I think they should actually tone it back a bit. Let the quarterbacks get hit a little, make it a little easier on the defenses, stop calling so many pass interferences or targetings. But yeah, I just think that they take a little bit back and then you're good. It's safer, way safer than, and then now they have concussion protocols, way to check, ways they have medical studies that are being done every single year to make it safer. I don't think you need to consistently every year sit and say, okay, what can we do to make it safer rules wise? You've already made it as safe as it's going to get. I mean, it's football, dude. Like you're not.
Well, I remember you and I joking in high school. We're like, man, like, by the time that we're having kids, like they're probably going to make it where you can't even sack the quarterback or something like that. And sure enough, like the roughing the passers over the past few seasons has skyrocketed, and
and some of them
ruling on it
terrible,
more and more arbitrary, right? Where like quarterbacks aren't even getting tackled; they're getting spun to the ground, which is very safe, by the way, right? Like I'm sure Mark would agree, getting just tackled versus which is getting driven to the ground, right? Versus spun and thrown to the ground. One is significantly more comfortable than the other one. So like, and that's still drawing flags, right? So we're basically getting to a point where you just got to like, kind of cradle the quarterback and, lull him to sleep and then set him gently on the turf. And that might not draw a flag.
And I don't think people realize how hard that is to do in like a high pressure, like moment of a game where like
it's damn near impossible to sack the quarterback.
The last thing you're thinking about is like, I really don't want to like hurt this quarterback or hit him too hard. Like you're just doing your job. And if you can listen, if you can get a hand in there and you can tackle him, you're not thinking about how you tackle. You just do it. It's like instinctive.
The quarterback's a football player like anyone else. Yeah, and these guys are paid millions of dollars. These defensive linemen are paid millions of dollars to just go get them. That is their only job, is to get past the 350-pound man that is doing everything in his power to stop you from getting to him, right? It's not an easy task. If you let up for a quarter of a second and you're too easy on your physicality, that could be the difference between making a sack or not. And now that has to be something that has to go through their mind. It's ridiculous. So, all right. I guess we'll get off of our old man, football isn't badass enough pedestal.
Make football great again. That's that's all we ask.
Yeah. So I think we're going to talk a little bit of college football because of the fact that, there's so many different headlines going around in the NFL right now.
What about the Thursday night flex, John? Did you want to?
Oh shit! We didn't even get there. We just got to the 25-yard.
I know you have a rant about the Thursday night football. I kind of want to see what you say because I might disagree.
Okay, so Thursday night flex, which is the third motion that got passed, apparently 24 votes on the dot, which is exactly how many were needed because Goodell had to really put on his politician hat and lobby some people, whip up the votes. And essentially this means that matchups, throughout the week can get flexed into the Thursday night spot. And I personally hate this because of the fact that the reason why Thursday night football isn't exciting is not because of the fact that the matchups stink en masse, right? It's impossible to say that all 17 games or whatever it is, 16 games of Thursday night football matchups are just happen to be the shittiest matchup of the week. I'd say in general, they are kind of a little bit more garbage games, but you can't just say that outright. What the real problem is that teams have 3 days, 72 hours, right? Less than, because they're traveling, to actually prepare for that game. And because of that, you're going to get lower quality football, period. And I love Thursday night football because of the fact that we have NFL football 3 nights a week, but it is not fair to the players to be to potentially be subjecting themselves to that on a more frequent basis than they already are. It's not good for their bodies. It's not good for the quality of the game. I will take NFL football on low preparation over, no NFL football at all on Thursday night, but I think that flexing it's a really bad idea. They're claiming that they're only going to use it every once in a while. Let's be real here. We know that's not true. If it's going to boost ratings and it's going to get more people watching, they'll flex a more serious matchup into there without even thinking twice about it.
I agree with you and I disagree with you. I agree with you on a lot of your points. I kind of think it's, obviously player safety and the quality of preparation is going to be altered by this. But as a fan, and like if I not a player, as just a fan, a viewer, I love it because Thursday night football, you're right. It's not always the worst game of the week, but a lot of times they do not put the best matchups in that slot, and it's a primetime slot. So I think that if you can flex a primetime worthy game there, and get more eyes on it, like I'd much rather watch a primetime game like Chargers Chiefs rather than some, shitty game like Raiders and, God knows who, right? Like Cardinals or something. And that's what they did a lot of the time last year. At least it seemed like it. They put like low scoring teams with bad quarterback play on Thursday night. And we're just like, here, you're just going to watch paint dry for 3.5 hours.
Yeah. Look, they had a lot of Denver games on prime time.
And we were not very nice to Denver. I'm sure Denver will get more this year, and maybe Sean Payton will help them score more than 6 points.
I was about to say, look, with Sean Payton at the helm, I'm not going to be hating on Denver's ability to score points nearly as much. At least I hope not.
If they're not scoring, I'm going to be very heavily on him.
Yeah. Well, I was about to say, if that's the case, then one, the NFL has a problem with putting Denver in primetime games, but 2, Russell Wilson is not fixable. If Sean Payton can't fix it,
this is it. This is his last try. 100%.
I think we've talked about this. Let's say he doesn't pan out this year. Let's say because the AFC is very competitive. Let's say Denver does not make the playoffs this year. Will this go down as the worst trade in all of sports history?
It's up there. I don't know if you could say the worst. It's up there, though.
Seattle completely reloaded their franchise through the draft capital that they obtained from Denver for this.
Yeah. And it's always about seeing, like, what happens on the other side, too. Like, seeing what Seattle just did with their draft picks, and seeing how those draft picks will pan out, that will help tell the story, too. But, yeah, it could be for Seattle, one of the best trades in history, and for Denver, one of the worst.
It's
depending on what happens.
We'll see. Look, I'm not totally.
If they win 7 or 8 games, John, I don't think you can say even if they don't make the playoffs and they win 7 or 8 games, it's an improvement.
That's what they were.
It just depends on what he plays like. If he's playing clean football and they're still losing games, like if Russell Wilson looks like the Russell Wilson we saw in Seattle, and he's making plays and he looks sharp, and they're just still losing, that's to me. That it is what it is. But if he looks like he did last year with Sean Payton as his coach, they're done.
Here's my problem is they were already, this was the narrative around Denver, right? Our defense is so good. Our offense is all these weapons. If we just had a freaking quarterback, we'd stop being a 6-7 win team and we'd be a 10-11 win team if we start making the playoffs. That is what you could still win 6-7 games with that roster with Drew Lock. Right? So if you just traded everything away, years worth of draft capital away to go get another guy that's just going to win you 6-7 freaking games all over again, like I don't know what the point is, right? I mean, they truly set themselves back years if this Russ trade does not pan out for them. They're not going to be relevant for a long, long time if they can't turn it around this year. That's at least my opinion on it. And again,
No, that's the truth. Yeah, I mean, it's when you give away that much value, you're betting on one guy, and if he doesn't pan out, that's the risk that they took, though.
There's only one other time that I've seen this pan out, which was Stafford and the Rams. They got their ring, and then they imploded on themselves. Denver's nowhere near getting their ring right now, and I don't know how they're going to pay some of those defensive studs that they have in the coming years. So,
well, yeah, I mean, Stafford's situation is slightly different. I think that roster was better than Denver's overall, and their schedule is probably a little bit easier, and they're in the NFC. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what they expected to get, was what happened with Stafford and the Rams. They expected the same thing to happen, and it hasn't come very close to happening. So you better fix it this year. And they went all in on Sean Payton too. So they just doubled down. They're like, all right, we're losing. Like, we got to do something.
I forgot that they traded their other first-round draft pick to the Saints to get Sean Payton, and then paid him.
They're paying him a ton. Yes, like they're like, all right, well, we gotta. It's like they're covering up the mistake they made with maybe another mistake, because
which good thing your owner owns Walmart, right? You can just go and drop $500 million on two guys' contracts, because that's basically what they did. Like, it's nuts. It's absolutely wild. All right. Now that we're off of those topics, now we can get to college football. I'm sorry about Thursday Night Football Flex getting left off my radar for a second there. So I think, like, just forward looking, right? How do you feel that each of the Power 5 conferences are going to pan out? Like, who's the teams that you're thinking about? Are there any, let's say, sleeper teams that might actually be in the running for a playoff spot? This is the last year that we're going to have a 4-team playoff bracket. It's going to get expanded next year, which is pretty exciting. Just, kind of what are your thoughts going into the season?
I can't wait. I love college football. In many ways, I like watching college more than the NFL. I know that might pain you to hear, John, but it's more, at least it has been more pure than the NFL in terms of players playing not for money, players playing to get an opportunity to go to the NFL. You're younger, you're like free agency. Exactly. It's changed. The game's changing. So as I'm saying this, I'm probably looking like a hypocrite, but yeah, I love college football, and the game gets pure and pure more. It just gets more pure as you go younger and younger. And I think high school's at its peak in terms of just the pure football and why people play it, and, like, just the best form of the game. Not saying it's the best football, just best form of the game.
Right. Everybody's there because they love it and they want to be
there. It's there for the right reasons. Yeah. It's not, it's, the politics of it, the money, all that stuff is not in the picture as you go younger. But college is awesome, dude. I mean, there's nothing quite like a Saturday football day, when you have a few primetime games back to back that are just awesome, electric environments. I mean, the game day environments at college, I'm sorry, it doesn't compete with NFL games for the most part. I mean, you'll have a few NFL stadiums that can.
No, I agree. The Bills are the only one that comes top of mind.
Yeah,
it reminds me of, like,
Lambeau is pretty college-y type,
Yeah.
but I mean, yeah, college football stadiums are just unreal. I mean, you go to a night game at the Big House, you go down to Tennessee, and like Penn State when they do their whiteout game, like, just, it's incredible. It's incredible to watch on TV. I can't even imagine. I mean, I've been to some Big House games, and I've played in Wisconsin Stadium with 80,000 people dancing to jump around, and it felt like an earthquake. That's crazy, but there's still so many stadiums I haven't seen, but even on TV watching it, it's insane.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see it, dude. I don't know. I think this season is going to be interesting because as Alabama's kind of, I mean, for a while it was like Alabama or Clemson. Who's it going to be, right? Because they had such a grasp on the college football world. They dominated recruiting. They had the best coaches. They were able to keep their coaching staffs together, which is one key piece to having consistency in that college level. But now it seems there's these other teams that have fought their way into the picture, right? Ohio State's kind of clawed their way back in. Michigan's clawed their way back into being relevant. Georgia has become the top dog, right? I mean, the Dogs are the top dog, back-to-back national champions. Yeah, no pun intended, but kind of pun intended. And so now you start to open up, and now you see like the ACC had it down here, but maybe they're coming back with like teams like North Carolina. Then this NIL has shifted everything where it's like, okay, well, what schools have a shit ton of money? Texas,
Texas
USC,
about to become a team.
UCLA,
Yep.
Oregon. These teams that have a shit ton of money and are funded by people that have a lot of money, all of a sudden are right back in the picture. And so it's interesting to see. I don't know if college football has ever been as interesting as it is right now. I don't know if it's the best it's ever been. That's kind of to be determined. But I think it's the most interesting it's ever been because of just the carousel of the recruiting and how it's changed.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, and NIL has its drawbacks, right? As we were talking about it not being like as pure of a game, quote unquote, because there are people 100% that are going to be transferring or making commitment decisions based off of their financial situation, 100%. But what that does do for the sport is, Alabama's decade-long reign of terror is probably not going to get repeated again, right? Like, you're going to get more teams in the mix. The expanded playoffs is going to make that entire situation way more competitive. Like, I think the days of one or two schools getting every single top, 4 and 5 star recruit, and then everybody else can kind of pick up the scraps for the most part. I think those days are basically over, right? It's going to be a lot more dispersed. There's going to be a lot more variety. And honestly, that's a lot more opportunity for the players too. So all of that is exciting. As a Michigan fan, right? Like, I've only grown up hearing my dad talk about how good Michigan was, like right around when I was born, and then I never actually kind of got to see it with my own eyes as a football fan. I can't be more stoked about what they have coming next season. Blake Corum and Edwards, are just a
best running back duo in the country.
Best running back duo in the country. One of the best offensive lines in the country, even with the fact that some guys got drafted. Obviously, JJ McCarthy, and then our defense is rock solid as well. We got good wide receivers, good corners. Like, this team might be better next year than they were this past year, and that's very exciting because obviously that playoff game left a bad taste in most Michigan's fans' mouths, and we're trying to get to the Natty. Like, I'd like to see it happen.
You're beating around, you're right there. You're beating around the bush. Like, let's do it, right? Like, let's get it done. Let's start with the Big Ten then. Let's go through the Power Five, John. Let's just do kind of and I mean, obviously you gave your answer. Who you think's going to win the conference? Maybe a couple teams that you think are in the mix, and then maybe a couple letdown teams in each conference that you think will underachieve, right? So let's just go through. Let's start with the Big Ten, right?
Sure.
We're Midwest guys. You're a diehard Michigan fan. You've already kind of alluded to the fact that you probably think
so winning
Big Blue is going to get it done.
Going undefeated for the regular season. U of M. Let's go.
Okay.
Now, and I'm not saying this just because I absolutely despise this team and everything that they stand for, but I'm also going to say Ohio State is going to continue to struggle to return the form. I think Ryan Day is a good football coach. I don't think that he's Big Ten reign of terror for, year over year kind of football coach. And my sleeper teams, because of that, I'm going to take a look at Iowa. I think that their offense was abysmal last year, but I think that they're a great coach with a good, well-ran program. So that, that's who it kind of.
They've gotten some key transfer pieces, McNamara.
Some big transfer pieces that should help that offensive situation. But then the team I'm more interested in that I actually think might be number 2 in the Big Ten is Penn State. I think Penn State is all the way back. The past 2 years have actually been, not more concerned, but probably just like around as worried about them on Michigan's schedule have been Ohio State. I don't remember the last time that I was saying that. Now, Michigan took care of business, no problem, right? But the fact that that's even a thought in my mind, right? I think that that's a lot of credit to how that program is getting ran. So as far as Big Ten, like that's how I'm thinking, right? Like Iowa, Penn State are 2 teams to keep an eye on. I think Ohio State, their reign of terror might be over. Oh, and also, just because I got to say it, little brother twerp Michigan State sucks. They're right back where they used to be. We're going to beat up on them year over year. They're not going to do shit. Their coach sucks. The program sucks. I think that fight that happened in the hallway perfectly speaks to where they are as an organization. I'm done with them, and I'm so excited to see Michigan on top and not having to worry about them ruining any of our seasons or, go have your punt play, whatever. I'm sure that's, going to stick out in everybody's mind forever. That's fine. We're going to beat you for the next decade. And I can say that very confidently. So
Dude, you pretty much said everything I was going to say. So, but I will build off of that. So I'll keep it simple though. Michigan will win the Big Ten. I do think that they have a very good chance of going undefeated. One loss at the most, maybe like a cheap, not to Ohio State or Michigan State, like some cheap bullshit like Illinois or some Iowa, someone beats them, right? But I do think they get to the playoff. I think they have a legitimate chance of winning the whole damn thing as well. And then I like Penn State as another competitor in that conference. And then I think my Michigan State's going to suck. I think that they're going to underachieve even as worse than people think, which I think people think they're going to win 6 or 7 games. I don't even think they win 6 or 7 games. I think they're going to be atrociously bad. I think Ohio State wins like 9 or 10 games just because they're Ohio State, but I just don't think they can get the big one done. I think they'll lose like an upset game. I think they lose to Notre Dame early in the season at Notre Dame.
Ooh,
and then I think they lose to Michigan. I think they lose to Michigan as well. What I'll say here is like the highlight of what you said about Michigan State, little brother. The worst thing in the world for Michigan State fans is Michigan being above Ohio State, because it's like when Ohio State's at the top, which they have been for the last 15 years. Okay. Michigan's here, and then Michigan State is right here fighting with Michigan. That's where the little brother, big brother, that's like in your like young ages where like, the little brother maybe hits puberty a little early, and now it's like, oh, they can actually kind of hang.
Right.
We've reached the point where, and Ohio State was always the biggest brother. So like they were just kicking the shit out of everybody, and they were like, whatever, I don't care if you guys hit puberty or not, like I'm going to beat your ass. But now Michigan has jumped. So like the middle brother is now the top dog, right? And now Michigan State is just the forgotten, like no one gives a shit about you. It's the worst thing that could happen for Michigan State, in my opinion, because now little brother, big brother isn't even relevant. Like you're not even in the picture. You think Michigan's worried about Michigan State? Hell no. I went to their facilities and saw practice. Everywhere it says Ohio State, whatever, 130 days till we beat the team, OH, and then like blanking out the rest of the word. That's all over their place. Not one thing says anything about Michigan State anywhere. But you know what it says? You know what it says in East Lansing? Beat Michigan, right? Win the state. All this bullshit. Like no, Michigan, Ann Arbor they don't lose sleep over them. No. And the fact that they're ahead of Ohio State now, Michigan is like, it's the worst thing that could happen for Michigan State because they are dead. And like you said, I see years and years of domination for them. They're lucky they got a few wins in the last few years that they can brag about for a little while with Kenneth Walker and the punt and all that shit. But it's going to be bad for Michigan State. Mel Tucker on his way out. They can't recruit. They're losing guys that they have in house. They're losing all the key players. They're losing recruits that are decommitting. I mean, that was what Mel Tucker was brought there to do. I can recruit everybody.
How long is Mel Tucker going to be there? I mean, seriously.
One more year. The problem is they paid him so much money.
They gave him a huge
contract. Do you want to eat his contract? Yeah, you want to eat his contract because it's a dream job for a good coach. Michigan State is like, it's a program that coaches would want to go to, and you hired the wrong dude. I mean, you paid him way too much money. He's like the third highest paid coach in college football. For what?
Embarrassing.
Okay,
quick segue, just because, again, offseason, we're going to have some offseason conversation topics. Do you have a memory of the worst injury that your little brother has inflicted on you? Because we both have 2 younger brothers that we were probably wrestling with a lot around the same age. Is there one that comes to mind where you're like, whoa, this was out of pocket?
Honestly, no, dude.
Really?
My brothers never really got a good shot on me. I was way bigger than my brothers because Cole was a late bloomer and I'm 3.5 years older than Anthony. So they never really had a chance with me. I would inflict I did some serious shit to them. I dislocated Cole's elbow when he was not even 1 year old, when I was 3. He kept stealing my blankie and I ripped it out of his hands and popped his elbow out of this place. And then I cracked Anthony's lip open.
All right, so you were a menace. Got it.
Yeah, I just was kind of a bully, I guess. And I mean, yeah, and then but like we kind of just stopped like wrestling and fighting by the time they were close enough in size to compete. So
Josh eventually did become stronger than me. But I would say it had nothing to do with those. It was all about him being too young to know the proper, let's say, like rules of engagement when it came to fighting. And he was pissed at me, and he had like a metal microphone in his hand and just launched that thing straight at me.
Oh,
hit me
yeah.
in the head with it.
Okay.
Oh,
I do have
so
one. I
bad.
have one. I did actually, I mean, it's still kind of me inflicting it, but I did something similar. I blindly threw a water bottle over my head and gave Cole a black eye. Just hit him like square in the eye. I wasn't even trying to like hit anybody. I just like threw it in the back seat.
Oh no, Josh was again. He was probably like 5 or something like that. Like I don't think he understood that, like, roughhousing is one thing, using weapons is another thing.
The one thing I'll give Cole and Tuan,
Microphone
the one thing I'll give them is they would never quit. I mean, I would literally, there was times where I would take Anthony's head and I would slam it against a pole in our basement, and I would be like, and I would be holding his head until I'm like, if you cry, I'll stop, and he wouldn't cry, and I would do it again, and he wouldn't cry. And so, like, I mean, and there was times he totally deserved it too, most of the time, because he was a little antagonist. But, yeah, I mean, they were tough as nails. So, like,
anybody that didn't have younger brothers, like, it's gonna sound like we like grew up with like domestic abuse in the house. No,
but this was completely normal.
Anybody that has,
you know what they would do, John? What they would do is one of them would sneak away because they would get genuinely scared for the other one, and they would get my dad. And my dad would come down and just like wrestle me and be like, "Oh, you want to beat up on the little guys? Let's go." And then he would just wrestle me, and just like I wouldn't be able to do anything. So that was usually what happened. But in extreme cases, they would get scared enough where one of them would sneak away, and all of a sudden I turn around and it's my dad. It's like, God damn it.
You're like, shit.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, let's move on to the other large conference, to SEC. I'd say, obviously it's Power 5, but let's be real here, especially with the way that teams are literally migrating to these two conferences. It's Big Ten and SEC. Those are your two football conferences. I'm curious to see what happens to Big 12, ACC, Pac-12 in the coming years. Are we all just going to merge into two mega conferences and it's going to look like the NFC and the AFC? Potentially. Look, I'll say it. I think Alabama has a better shot at it this year than Georgia, and it's just because of the sheer amount of talent they lost in the draft, right? You're losing your quarterback from the past few years, Heisman candidate. You're losing, over the past 2 years, their entire front seven got drafted, right? I'm thinking about that. Yeah, their entire front seven got drafted.
I think damn near their entire starting roster got
their
drafted.
Entire, yeah.
But, hey, that happened after they won the first one too. They lost like their entire defense and they just reloaded.
Yeah, it's just, even then, you still had Jalen Carter as a starter 2 years. You still had Nolan Smith as a starter, I think 3 years. Like, you're not just losing a lot of talent, but you're also losing a ton of, guys with experience, which I know in college football, it's kind of a loaded term, but I think, guys coming back a second or third year does matter a lot. And also coaching, right? Didn't they lose their defensive coordinator to the NFL, if I'm thinking correctly?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So I think all of those things are, not,
but Kirby Smart's, he's the genius behind the defense at the end of the day.
That is true.
But I kind of agree with you there. Georgia will be good, obviously. I don't think they'll be as good as they were this past year, but I do think they compete in the SEC. They
definitely compete
because they're just, they just reload, dude. They got something going on there, and they recruit well. Until someone dethrones them, I'm going to keep them at the top.
Okay, so Georgia comes away with the SEC for you. Bama comes away with the SEC for me. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Okay, go ahead and run down the rest of your spiel. Sorry.
My underrated teams are teams that I think will do well. Ole Miss, I think, will do really well. They haven't been able to get over the hump the last few years. They have probably the best overall quarterback room in the country. They have 3 guys that would start pretty much anywhere else besides like USC and maybe Michigan. Like they have 3 guys that are, top 15 quarterbacks in the country, and they're all on the same roster and they're all fighting for the same spot. Caden Prescore and tight end. We had him on a few episodes ago as a guest. He transferred there. They have a loaded offensive, receiving core and running backs, tight ends. And then I think their defense will get better. I think that's what's missing. But Ole Miss is that team. I think LSU
was gonna say they
year
went
two with
10-4
Brian Kelly.
with a year one and with Brian Kelly. I mean, that's pretty
Brian Kelly
significant.
just wins, man. He just wins, and they are pretty much bringing everybody back. So LSU is right there with my other team. That's the sleeper. I think Tennessee falls off. So Tennessee had a really good year
Okay.
last year. I think Tennessee is the team that there's going to be hype around that I think just falls off.
Now, why do you say that? Because they're bringing a lot of guys back, and Joe Milton was a damn good quarterback after Hooker got injured. And
Yeah.
he's obviously
So
going back.
I don't believe in Joe Milton is a big thing. I think he's got a hell of an arm. He's got a rocket arm. Dude looks the part, but he couldn't really get it done when he was in Ann Arbor. I just don't think I don't think he's a winner. And then I just think that their offense, the scheme that they're doing, is going to get figured out. I think that Georgia and Alabama are spending a lot of time prepping and just seeing what can we do to contain this offense. They lost a lot of speed at the receiver position. They lost two guys. Their two leading receivers are gone. So I just think Tennessee falls off a little bit this year. I'm not saying they're going to be bad. I don't think they compete with teams like Alabama like they did last year. I mean, they beat Alabama. I just don't think that they're going to be in that mix.
That's fair enough. And hey, it's a very, very competitive conference, so somebody's got to fall off somewhere, right? Especially if Bama's going to kind of return to form and LSU's kind of getting back at it too. That changes the equation quite a bit. Moving to ACC, Notre Dame's big. Honestly, this entire conference, I think, is a big question mark, and I think it's the main thing that's used against a lot of these teams is the fact that that their competition isn't what potentially the SEC and the Big Ten are kind of playing on a regular basis. So obviously, like the guys that
that's
you
what
kind
Clemson, that's what Clemson
Right.
thrived with so many years, right? They didn't really.
That's what I was
play
gonna
much
say. Is
anybody.
you got Florida State, you got Clemson, and you kind of got Notre Dame. Is there any I'm kind of
I
missing?
mean, Notre Dame's technically independent too. Like
right. Well, they're
played-
essentially ACC.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're it's like a hybrid or whatever. I think out of that, I mean, Clemson will probably come away with it just because of the fact. I mean, even last year I think was a down year for them. They still went 11-3. Still kind of dominated their conference. How much weight does that carry? I'm not totally sure. But yeah, also my brother Josh, the one that threw the microphone at me, is currently at Clemson, so I feel partially obligated to root for him. He says those games are pretty freaking fun down there. It's not a very huge school either compared to other Power 5
It's
schools.
a sweet game day environment, though.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is like a pretty awesome game day spot for considering the fact their student populations, like half that is Bama or LSU or some of those other schools in the South. So,
do you have any ACTs? Any ACC? I said ACT. I'm just thinking in my nightmares.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, where the hell are we at with that? You opened.
I missed
the
the deadline for the May one.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I went to sign up for it, and I was 2 days late.
Get on it. I swear to God, man.
I missed.
I would have done the honorable thing, and I would be taking the ACT this month had I had lost that bet. And
I'm trying to take it. I literally went to.
I see your face is like blush red right now. You're embarrassed. You're getting.
My face is red because I'm in like a red room.
Yeah, whatever. Sign up for the freaking ACT. I think the fan base deserves. By the way, for those that are new of you here, because there are quite a lot of you, Mark and I's bet was what they'd get over 7 wins,
6.5, I believe.
6.5 wins for the Detroit Lions. And so when they were 1-6, I had just completely capitulated. I conceded the L. I was like, oh my gosh, like how did I ever possibly think that this team was going to be this good? I was making so many excuses week after week after week that like, hey, the Lions are right there. They're right there. By the time they were 1-6, I'm like, oh man. And I turned around and sure enough, Mark has to take the ACT now. And they ended up getting 9 wins actually. So, exceeding expectations. But yeah, this scrub still apparently forgot to sign up for it. So
no, I didn't forget. I went to do it and it was too late.
You forgot is what that means.
Basically, that's the worst slip up of me trying to say ACC and saying ACT because I once I did that, it
was over for you.
It was over for me. So ACC. Back to college football. I'll change the subject very nicely here. I like North Carolina in the ACC this year. Drake May, I think, is going to be a Heisman candidate. I really liked what he did last year. I think he's the second best quarterback in college football, maybe third. You might put JJ McCarthy at 2. Caleb Williams, obviously 1.
I like the sound of that.
I just think UNC gets it done. This is, Don Brown's been there a few years now. They're kind of building the culture they want. Again, they have the quarterback to do it, and the ACC isn't incredibly strong overall. I would say it's gotten a little bit better than it was a few years ago when Clemson was just basically top, the king and no one else could compete. Florida State's kind of on the return. Virginia Tech.
Florida State had a good season
Pitt.
last year. Yeah, definitely
Yeah,
don't count
so
them out.
my sleeper teams would be Pitt, just because I think they're going to play good defense. Narduzzi gets it done on the defensive side every single year, and I think that they always compete really well. Clemson, obviously, I'm not going to call them a sleeper, but they're going to contend. They're going to compete for it. And then I also think Florida State is back. I think Florida State's got a loaded roster. They've fixed some of their problems. They had a few years where it's like, where the hell are you? I mean, they're one of the best programs in college football. They weren't for a few years. People are wondering what the hell's happening there. I think they're back. I think they've gotten some key weapons in the transfer portal. They got a quarterback that can flat out play, and I think that they're right there and they'll compete. And so that's my ACC. I think Virginia falls off. Virginia's had a couple of good years in a row. I think they fall off. I don't think they're very good at all. That's my
Sure, that's
bad
fair.
ACC team. NC State too, I think falls off. They had a good year last year. I think they fall off this year. We got what's bet? You want to do Big 12? The last year of the Big 12 being any bit relevant at all because of
that's
Texas
true.
and Oklahoma being
Sorry,
gone.
here I was just fixing the ticker real quick. Let's see. I just wanted to make sure I nailed this. Yep, there we go. Remind Mark to take the ACT. Cool. All right. So just making sure that's there now. And hopefully, the rest of the fan base can help you remember to take the ACT.
Yeah, it's I just want to get it done, honestly.
I got to rip that Band-Aid off. This as Mark alluded to, this is the last year that this is going to be a relevant division, because in the same way that some of these Big 12 teams that we're going to talk about are going to get absorbed into the SEC. We got, pretty much the two major programs in this division going into the Big 10 next year. So, and with that, right, I mean, would you say that those are the teams most likely to be successful, or which is USC and UCLA? I mean, I would say that those are your two front runners to win that division this year.
In the Pac-12 or the Big 12?
Conference. Oh, sorry. We were talking about Big 12. I was in the middle of writing something. My bad. We can do Big 12 first. So Big 12, I would probably say the same thing that I just said about the Pac-12. The teams that are going to get swallowed into the SEC are probably the teams that we're talking about.
The same narrative.
Competitors. It's exact same narrative. I mean, Texas, right? That's the Oklahoma too, for sure. I think Oklahoma deserves its due credit, but really, I think Texas is going to be like an Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, U of M size program in a couple of years, and I think that probably starts with this season, completely dominating. They have all the money, all the NIL, all the resources at their disposal. Their recruiting classes from the past years have been absolutely disgusting compared to, what they've done the past decade prior. There's no reason that Texas shouldn't just pretty much beat up on the rest of this conference, I think, with, again, maybe, Oklahoma probably being the biggest other contender there. So far, how do you feel about that take?
I agree that Texas is the contender. But I think Oklahoma falls off a little bit this year, actually. I just think Oklahoma is going to struggle offensively in a conference where it's like offense-heavy football, and I don't think they'll be able to score enough to keep up with some of these other teams, even though they just got a new OC. So Oklahoma, I think, falls off a little bit. Oklahoma State also falls off a little bit. They lost their quarterback in the transfer portal. They won't be the same. I think it's Texas, and I think Baylor are the two teams I think that compete. And I also think TCU falls off as well. I think that they lost pretty much everybody on offense and defense. They had their year. They had their Cinderella run. I don't think – I mean, there's going to be high expectations for TCU going into the season. I think they've I think
What
they
a
fall
run
off.
it was, man.
Yeah, it was a great run. The Hypno Frog, I think it's over. It was a one and done thing. They lost Duggan, they lost their best receiver, they lost their best running back, they lost their best offensive lineman, they lost their key linebacker, they lost their best corner. Like they really, I mean, they lost a lot of dudes. So
if I'm remembering correctly, too, it's Cincinnati and there's 2 or 3 teams
Memphis,
joining.
I think that
Aren't they going somewhere else, like, or joining the Big 12?
they're joining the Big 12. Yeah, they're leaving like the American. And again, so it's like the Big 12 is not going to die. I mean,
and this is 2024 that's happening, right? It's not this year. It's the following year.
No, it's not this year. Yeah, it's not this year.
So all of this shake up between the SEC, the Big 12, and the Big 10 is all happening in 2024 at the same time that the college football playoff is happening. Thinking about that correctly?
It's kind of like a college football reset, honestly.
Yeah.
This is the last year we'll see college football as we know it, and it's going to look very different in the following year. But yeah,
I think it'll be an improvement. I'd call it.
I think so too. It's more competitive is going to be an improvement. More teams that can compete in the playoff is an improvement. I think they're doing the right thing.
For sure.
Well, since you got into the Pac-12 a little bit, you want to continue your Pac-12?
Yeah, and again, same narrative, right? I think UCLA and USC are the 2 teams that you should have your eyes on, and I think honestly, by a good margin here, USC is going to be the team to come away with this conference. And I mean, there's a few reasons where you can cite why, but there's really one reason, and that's they have the best quarterback in the country, who's probably going to be drafted first pick overall. Barring, God forbid, like an injury or something like that. There's a very high probability that he is going to be the first quarterback off the board the following draft. And yeah, I mean, I think because of that, he's going to have to put a statement out there and obviously show that he is worth that pick. And I think that's going to mean USC is going to smack the shit out of the rest of that conference. Similar to what I think for Texas, right? I think like both of those teams are just kind of a cut above the rest of the competition in that conference. And look, UCLA has a shit ton of money, same situation as Texas. So if they don't catch up this year, it's not going to take very long, I think, at all for them to catch up once they're in the Big Ten. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Chip Kelly's doing some special things with UCLA too. You're starting to see that offense is growing. He's kind of, he had such a great run at Oregon when he was there back in the day.
He's been there for how many years now?
I want to say like 5 or 6 years, man. But this is like usually where as a coach, like you kind of reach that point of like, all right, I'm doing things my way. I've been doing it for a while. I've got my players here that I recruited that I'm developing. And I think they'll start to see.
I mean, it was year 5 or 6 for Harbaugh at the same time.
Yeah, it takes a few years. I mean, not many coaches can just walk in the door and flip a program and within 1 or 2 years.
Especially college. It's a lot harder because
you
do have to legitimately develop that talent, while the NFL, it's like everybody you get is, freaking ridiculous for the most part.
It's
now one sleeper team that I think we should all have our eyes on, which has been, kind of the talk of the town is Colorado.
I'm not putting them. I'm putting them in the underachieve.
I mean, I think expectations this year, I think they're going to be tapered because, as we're saying, it's going to take 4 or 5 years for them to kind of, show what they're. But the transfer portal situation is interesting. A lot of guys flocking there, a lot of guys flocking out too. So it's like,
forced out. I mean, they basically reset their entire roster. I don't know if you saw, but Pat Narduzzi from Pitt, head coach at Pitt, came out and said publicly, like, when they created these NIL and transfer portal rules, that is not what it was intended for. It was not intended to just basically force like 50, 60 kids to just up and leave the program they committed to for 4 years for their education. Their families committed to it. Like, I mean, it's a big deal choosing which college you go to play football, to study, all that stuff. And they basically just like it's an NFL team. Just, hey, you're cut. You guys all sucked last year. You don't have what it takes. I'm bringing in my dudes. I don't like that. I would have been.
I don't like that either, because
whether he kept me there or whether I was one of the people that got sent out, I would have been frustrated. It's like those are like my brothers that you just kicked out of here. Like I mean, those have been some of my best friends for 2 years, 3 years now.
As you were saying too, like 90% of the guys that are going to college or playing college football are going there to receive an education and also play football, right? Obviously, there's that 10% of guys, and maybe it's even less than that, right? Because only less than 1% actually get drafted. But let's say, you have 10% of those guys that actually have like NFL dreams, alive, and that's what they're going to college for, is to put themselves in the best position to go into the NFL. Everybody else is there for an education at the end of the day. So
yeah, and the experience,
yeah, and the experience, and it's a hairy situation because of that for sure.
Yeah, but I do think it's worth noting. I think USC does win it, like you said, best player in the country. That offense, another year of developing with Lincoln Riley, who just seems to be the quarterback whisperer. Can we just acknowledge that really quickly before I talk more about the Pac-12? Lincoln Riley is responsible for Baker Mayfield and the career he had and the Heisman Trophy and all the offensive success, Kyler Murray, and Caleb Williams.
And hey,
I mean,
if Caleb Williams goes into the NFL and he's as good as the other two guys you mentioned, I would say, people would be pretty content with that. The people that say Baker was a bust, I don't think are paying attention to the situation he walked into and what he was able to do with it. Is he ever going to return to prior form? Probably not. But look, I think if you could ask any Cleveland Browns fan, were they mad that they had Baker Mayfield as their quarterback for the time period that they did? I don't think they would be upset. He brought them their first playoff win.
And I'm not saying he's making the best pro quarterbacks in the world, but in terms of college quarterbacks,
right?
Success, and by the way, Jalen Hurts too. So he has he's ridiculous in terms of just developing these college quarterbacks into being great college players. Not just great, like the best quarterback in the country. Pretty much every time he has any guy worth any talent, he's able to get the very most out of them. That's an unbelievable skill that he has. And so I give them the I'll say that preseason, I'll give them the nod that they'll win. But you're forgetting about a team, John. Yes, UCLA is a contender. But Utah, back-to-back Pac-12 champs.
I did kind of leave them out of the conversation.
You left them out of there, and they have been able to take care of USC, take care of Oregon, take care of all these teams that have way more money than them, kind of like the underdog mentality, the Utes, man. I don't think you can forget about them. So I'm going to put them right there in the contender, and then the team I think will fail is Colorado. I think Colorado fails. Deion Sanders in year one. I just don't think they get it done in year one. I think it's happening too quick. I think he's going to have a very big wake-up call that doing shit however he wants to do it might work at Jackson State. I don't think it works at Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very particular way of coaching, for sure, to be put kindly, right? So, and I do agree. Like, you can get, I'd say, those kind of results on just kind of being like a hard-ass kind of cutthroat sort of coach in that program. It's a little bit different when you're playing, Division I Power 5 football, I think. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely college coaches that had that brand, and they, are very successful with that brand. But we'll see how it pans out. It's definitely one of the more interesting stories to follow in college football, probably this year and beyond, because it's definitely a unique situation. So.
You want to take a look, John, at the top 25 way too early and just kind of look through it and see if anything stands out, like teams that just have no right being there or teams that are left off the list? Or
yeah, let's crack this open,
because that's kind of we've gotten to like the Power 5. There's covered them. We don't want to forget about the smaller schools either, but that would take a lot of time to cover all of those schools as well.
I can zoom in a bit here. So, all right, I mean, 1, they got Georgia. 2, they got Michigan. I'd say preseason rankings,
pretty accurate.
Pretty accurate. 3, they got Ohio State. 4, they got Alabama. I would probably swap these.
Switch those, dude. Ohio State way too high. Way too high.
Honestly, I put Penn State above Ohio State here
and
too,
LSU.
Honestly.
And LSU.
And LSU. I think you're right. And look, you are getting 100% biased takes out of Mark and I. We are lifelong Michigan fans and residents of the state of Michigan. So, but at the same time, I don't think Ryan Day is it. Straight up. Sorry.
And they haven't looked. I mean, they lost a lot of key pieces too.
Yep.
I'd say Florida State way too high. They have them at 7.
Yeah, that's a bit rich. USC, I'd say, is about right.
I put USC higher.
Washington is too high.
I don't know, dude. That's another Pac-12 team we didn't mention, but Michael Penix is one of the star quarterbacks in the country. I think Washington competes in the Pac-12. Pac-12 is actually a lot better than there's 5 or 6 teams in there that are legit.
Yeah, and I'm almost thinking about kind of rescinding my USC take that it's just kind of a lock for them. But at the same time, the more I think about it, I'm like, okay, all these
Caleb
teams
Williams is special, man.
yeah, I was about to say, like, all these teams are good, but they don't have Caleb Williams running the show. So I'm going to stick with it. Utah.
TCU too high.
About right. TCU is too high. Utah, I'd say, is about right. It should probably be above TCU. Tennessee, you're saying is too high. I'm inclined to
way
agree
too
with
high.
that. Notre
Dame's about right.
Yeah.
Because they're loaded. Clemson, about right. I mean,
yeah. Oregon's too high. Sorry. Ducks.
Too high.
Oregon State's also too high.
Way
Sorry.
too high, Oregon State. Yeah,
whatever.
Way too high. Texas too low.
Texas is way too low.
They underachieved last year, but like, I mean, come on.
Next year is going to be different. And the year after that is going to be different.
We'll see. I'm not crazy high on Arch Manning. I don't like getting too into the whole name thing. I get he has a name that's pretty impressive, but like it doesn't always mean that you're going to be.
I don't know, man.
He's not even the starter this year,
okay,
so we'll see.
Four Mannings that we know of, and 3 of them were all-time great football players.
Doesn't mean their kids are going to be, dude.
I'm not. Okay. You're right. You're completely right. But also, I don't know, man. I haven't taken too much time to like see how big Arch's forehead is. That's probably, like how big is the brain?
He didn't look very good in spring ball as far. And it's obviously
super
early.
Worried about it. Yeah. Like I said, not this year, probably next. Tulane, I kind of like where they're sitting just because of the fact they kind of were like a fun, gritty team last year.
They deserve where they're at there. Yeah. They beat USC. Yeah.
Texas Tech,
too high. The hell?
Kansas
Way
State.
Too low. Kansas State should be higher, honestly. Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Kansas State always competes. I don't know what it is.
Iowa's too low. I think they're gonna be the best team in the Big Ten West next year. So
I think it's about where they belong. North Carolina too low. Too low.
Yeah.
Drake May.
Yeah, but I mean, having a damn good quarterback doesn't all of a sudden mean, unless you're Caleb Williams, that is. Drake May.
Wisconsin sleeper team, Big Ten that we did not mention, and I feel like an idiot.
Why
They're
are
way
you
too
saying
low.
that? Why?
Because it's the fickle effect, dude. Like the trickle down effect, fickle effect. Dude got hired at Madison. All he did was win at Cincinnati.
Ole Miss
former
too
teammates
low.
is the running backs coach there, by the way. Shout out to Devin Spalding. Wisconsin's going to be really good, dude. They're going to turn it around.
Ole Miss too low.
Too low.
Too low.
Should be higher. And I don't know how the hell UTSA is on here.
Yeah, I feel
25.
like there's other teams that you could put there. So yeah, I mean, look, based off of what we were talking about, I would say that's there we go. Graceful recovery. I would say that we're about right as far as, kind of where we had things ranked. I think I don't know. I think that's kind of how the dominoes are going to fall. Obviously, we'll see. But
I love how they do preseason rankings. Like it's literally a completely new season. Like, what are you ranking it off of? It's literally all off of like speculation and stuff.
Well, especially since like it's not like the NFL, right? Like the turnover in college
is crazy. Yeah,
ridiculous.
I mean, year to year, it's completely different.
Yeah, so it's
John. Can we before we wrap this episode up, can we rant about the NBA?
Yeah, well, look, I'll say this because everybody was saying the NBA is rigged because the semifinals always have to go to Game 7 or whatever. I think it's awesome that the 2 favorites get swept, or what the Heat Celtics game is going on. Like
it's happening right as we record this.
What's the score?
I'll check it as you continue your rant.
Yeah, so I think that's cool, and it's Celtics are up 1 right now.
Yeah, it's a 2-point game within the second quarter.
Yeah,
but
so that's kind of where I'm at with it. Is I'm excited to watch the Heats and the Nuggets go at it because I don't think that's a matchup in the finals that anybody was expecting, and so I'm looking forward to it. And and this is going to set up what I know you're going to say next. Shout out to the Lakers for making it this far. I didn't think they had, a shot in hell to even try to compete for getting into the finals. And I think that, LeBron's time is reminding me a lot of Tom Brady's time where, it's you win the finals your first year with that team, and then everything else is just kind of like slowly rolling your way into retirement. You should probably have called it when you were at the top. So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I want to first give credit to Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler is like I feel like him and Kobe Bryant are the closest things we've seen to Michael Jordan, not in terms of how great they are, in terms of their competitive nature, and that, like, especially in basketball, because it isn't a crazy violent sport and there's a lot of really soft players that are the greatest, put quotation marks around that, greatest players in the league. Some of them are so goddamn soft, and he's one of those dudes, just a badass. Like, he's just has an assassin mentality. He's coming for the throat every single time. He does not care. He does not mince words. He doesn't fear anybody. So I respect the hell out of Jimmy Butler. I'd love to see him get a ring. Problem is that I really like Jokic too, because he's the same thing. He doesn't give a shit about anything. He just plays, and he does not, he doesn't flop. He doesn't do this shit. He doesn't whine and bitch. Like, he just does his thing. And it's refreshing to see that, because that's what the NBA used to be when the NBA was at its peak. And
Right.
It's gotten so watered down. The players have way too much control now. I mean, basically, a player whines, they can get their coach fired in like 2 seconds. It's just insane.
Yeah, and
Which
I mean,
leads-
all the superstars spend most of the regular season just kind of like stretching their legs out.
Yeah,
and
dude, they
chilling,
don't
and
do shit all regular season, and you saw it affect some of the teams this year. The Warriors coasted through the entire regular season. They had the talent to repeat, or at least be in the finals again, and they just chose to coast, and it was too late. When they tried to turn it on, they should have beat the Lakers. When they tried to turn it on, it was too late. So they lost to a team that was, not as good as them, and that's embarrassing. I mean, come on. But I want to get on my soapbox really quick to wrap up the episode with a controversial take of just hate for LeBron James. I hate everything about LeBron James. And
Wait, hold on. I want to replace what you just said there with the shout out Jalen Ramsey quote in the reel. There we go.
Dude, I hate everything about, and it's not even like he's a great player. He's an outstanding player. He's one of the best of all time, not the best. And I'd probably put him third or fourth. And the reason being that I hate him is because I just hate how he plays. I don't like, if you're his, first of all, he refers to himself as King James. He gave himself the nickname King James. He makes his Twitter handle King James. Like, you have to call yourself the king. You're not the king. Sorry. MJ, he didn't give himself nicknames. They gave him Air Jordan. They gave him MJ. You say MJ, you know who the hell you're talking about. Okay? You say LJ, you don't know it's LeBron James, right? But you call yourself King James, that pisses me off. I hate how he flops. I hate how he whines. I hate that he's soft. He chooses to miss games. He doesn't have the assassin, and it's not his fault. He's one of the most gifted athletes we've ever seen, but he does not have that mentality like Michael Jordan, like Tom Brady, like the true GOATs we've seen play their sports. He doesn't have that. And it's not his fault, but people that say he's the GOAT, wrong. You're just simply wrong. You cannot possibly watch him play and say that's the best player of all time. He just doesn't have that, like, I'm going to go and, because he has the capability of taking over a game every game. He can go and score every time he wants to, and he doesn't. Michael Jordan had the capability, and he damn sure he did it every single time.
Like, the competitive nature of it is the thing that, like, and again, like, I'm not a super avid basketball fan. Like, the most basketball I ever watched in my life is back when the Pistons were really competitive, back in 2005 to like 2008 or so. So like, I'm not super in the loop with it, and still I have to agree with you where I watch LeBron play, or I see the headlines that come out about him, and it just doesn't, like, that's the one thing that I can give to Tom Brady that I can't give to LeBron, where Tom Brady, every second of every day, every waking moment that he's been alive, I am 100% sure that football has been like front of mind for him, and competing in football,
getting better, always competing.
Always.
And again, it's that drive of, it's not even like that he wants to win. It's that he doesn't want to fucking lose. Like, he's insane. Like, you have to be a little bit insane.
He's a little crazy.
Yeah, the best we've ever seen are crazy. LeBron's not crazy. He's just incredibly crazy gifted. But there's been a lot of gifted players, and he's the most gifted. Probably that's just, just born the way he is. And yes, he works hard and all that stuff. But the mentality is not something you're born. That's something you're born with that LeBron didn't get. and it's not
Jordan,
his fault.
if he wasn't an NBA player, might have been a serial killer. By the way that
he
thought
was going to be
about
great in whatever he wanted to be, whenever he wanted to do, because he just had that competitive nature, and he was not going to take no for an answer. He was not going to fail.
He would
LeBron's
make up
failed so many
things
goddamn times.
in
It's
his
not even
head
funny.
to
Yeah.
make himself, to give himself a more competitive edge against whoever he was competing
And
against.
Kobe was the same way too. Kobe was insane, right? Kobe was like, I mean, probably clinically insane, like just not normal people. They're not normal. LeBron does not fit that mold. Incredibly gifted, and he's a top 5 player of all time. You could probably have him at 4 or 3, and I'd be okay with it. But you cannot put him ahead of the guy named Michael. Michael Jordan is just in a league of his own. Okay.
Also, shoe game goes way harder, and I think
Yeah,
the ability to build a business like that also speaks to itself as your legacy as a basketball player. Don't ask me how. I know
Michael
that
Jordan
take
transformed. Michael Jordan transformed sports. He transformed shoe wear.
Totally.
He transformed like every. I mean, it wasn't just basketball that he changed. He changed the world. Like he was a world figure, and LeBron is too, but he just hasn't had the same effect. And it's sad that LeBron has to live in the shadow of that and always get compared to him, because he's probably the closest thing we've seen to him in terms of like being great at such a young age and having such a long career and all that stuff. But he's not a top 3 player, and I hate when people say it, and I hate when people try to say he's better than Jordan. It's actually incredibly insulting, honestly.
Do you agree with the take too? Because I go back and forth on this. When I think about my memory of basketball during the Bad Boys era and stuff like that, I have to agree. Like LeBron would have been like completely chewed to pieces,
shredded apart,
physicality of basketball 30 years ago, right?
Apart. Would not have stood a chance. And there's some people who are like, "Are you kidding me? He's so much bigger and stronger than those guys." Like Bill Laimbeer would have done nothing to LeBron James. Here's the thing: LeBron, yeah, he's physically like probably bigger and stronger, more athletic. He is, for lack of better expression, a pussy. He's soft. He flops. He has guys half his size that knock him over. He's a bitch. He is.
Yeah.
If you don't think that, and then there's people that say like, "Oh, LeBron would be such a good NFL player." Like for maybe like very few things, but there's no way that dude lasts an NFL season. Not one. He does not last one season without.
I don't think LeBron could handle getting tackled.
He takes one shot to the rib from
Yeah.
a Cam Chancellor type safety, and he's done. He will never. He's not physically built for toughness, and he's, like I said, he doesn't have that assassin's mentality. So that's it. I want to put that out there. I'm a huge LeBron hater. And also, it's kind of like the different eras. LeBron represents this soft player run era that's like the players get whatever they want. James Harden makes millions and millions of dollars. He's been like thrown around teams like a rag doll. Like nobody really wants
James Harden drives me nuts, frankly.
It's this whole thing where basically the whole league is like that. I mean, Devin Booker's pretty soft. Durant's soft.
I think that's what happens.
Paul George is soft. Like all these guys are soft.
When you have a league or a sport where you have 5 starters, right? And those starters are, there's not a whole lot of competition, right? There's not a whole lot of fire on them from guys underneath those 5 starters, right?
Yeah.
You get to be a prima donna superstar, make everything about yourself. And like, I don't totally blame the players, because I do think just the league and the structure of the sport is set up to treat them like they're royalty a lot of the time. But like, you can't get away with that in football, right? We've seen guys come in with big egos and act like the whole world revolves around them, and they are out of the league.
And that's what makes it so great. That's why the NFL continues to grow and have more viewers, and the NBA is dying, right? People don't want to see that shit. People don't want to see this drama queen, where the players like at one night they just might not play and they're on the side. They're not even like wearing team.
If I wanted to watch reality TV, dude, I'd watch,
exactly.
Bravo
they're on the sideline, resting their knee soreness. And they're wearing like it's a fashion show. It's like, dude, put on a Lakers shirt. Like, what are you doing? Some of them don't even go to the games.
Yeah.
LeBron's shooting movies during the damn season. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's gotten out of hand. And that him being the face of that and being the face of the league for as long as he has, the last 20 years, it's changed it, dude. All these younger guys are soft. I mean, there's very few guys that are like badass assassin. Like, I love watching them play. Jimmy Butler, Giannis, Jokic, a few other guys that, I'm not going to think of off the top of my head, but that compete night in, night out, that are tough, that play basketball the way it should be played. And like that's why the NBA when it was great is because every player was doing that. And sure, the talent might not have been as good, and they're not as the athletic or as good of shooters or anything like that. But the league is soft, dude. It's soft, and some of the very best players are the softest, and that's scary.
And look, you can't argue with your take because of the fact that if you just look at the numbers, the NBA is getting crushed.
It's getting shit on. Yeah,
nobody's watching it. No, hockey's on the come up. Even the MLB's trying to save itself. We'll see what happens there. NFL's growing year over year over year like it's nothing, and they're making money hand over fist like it's nothing. And the NBA is struggling to even keep consistent viewers during the playoffs.
And that's why, John, and that's why, and to wrap this episode up and kind of, from beginning of what we talked about to like end of episode, that's why I get so scared with the NFL and these rule changes and what we talked about in the beginning of this episode. Because if you continue to make that sport softer, people are going to start to realize this is not the game that we loved. The basketball, the NBA is so goddamn soft compared to what it used to be. People used to love basketball. I still love watching basketball when it's played properly and there's, fouls, hard fouls, and, people are competing and like diving for loose balls and stuff like that. And you just don't see that a whole bunch anymore in today's game. And I mean, the viewership is showing that. If you start to change the NFL too much, that's what will happen. Learn from the NBA, Goodell. Do not continue to soften a sport that's not supposed to be soft. And basketball isn't supposed to be soft either, and it's just gotten incredibly soft. It used to be a physical-ass sport. I mean, you go to the lane, you're getting fouled. Like, you're getting thrown to the ground. There was punches thrown. There was fights, and you weren't thrown out of the game. Like, it was a competitive thing, and it was awesome to watch. The Bad Boys Pistons, go look them up on YouTube if you haven't seen some of their stuff. Like, that was awesome.
Yeah, it's a completely different era. It's a totally different sport. You're right. And
if that was basketball every night, dude, basketball might be my favorite sport. Like if people are just like tackling each other and shit and like getting in fights, like basketball is a sweet sport, especially in that era. Yeah. And it's just ruined. And the NFL is on its way to that if they don't be careful. That's, in a nutshell, what I'm trying to get at.
Right. Well, hey, to wrap that up too. Player safety is important. I think Mark and I, both being former players, yes, you want to protect people. Do not alter what the sport is in that aim, because you're not going to make them any safer, and you're also making the game shittier, right?
How would the UFC be, John? How would the UFC be if they took out kicks to the head?
Yeah,
it's not the same.
No, and even like, there's that doctor on YouTube, what's his name, Suter or whatever, the dude that like puts out like reviews of injuries like the minute they happen. It's like crazy. He said like, what you can't be worried about, somebody kicking somebody's knee and potentially blowing out their ACL in a sport where you guys are punching each other in the head on a regular basis, right? Because like, are you trying to say that a guy potentially risking their knee is more or less dangerous than a dude literally getting a blow to the head? Like you can't start making those comparisons. Like that's just a part of the sport, man.
You know what I think we should do, John? I think we should just bring back like, the ancient Rome Colosseum fight to the death, sword in hand. Fuck it, like let's just bring it back to what we,
you went full times. You went full heel this episode.
Yeah, dude. I mean, here's the thing. Like, there's nothing better than two people fighting to the death. Think about like Game of Thrones and like all these awesome shows. Like if that used to be real shit.
If you sign up, do that. Let's sign you up for it.
No, I don't want to do it, but if you pay me millions of dollars, maybe I'll do it. Like
honestly, the UFC is the closest thing we have to that, and even that sometimes I'm like,
it's awesome.
This is a little too brutal for me.
No, it's awesome.
I'm more of a boxing guy, right? Little safer, more technicals, right? Like Tyson Fury's my dude.
UFC is so goddamn awesome because of the fact that these guys are literally like could kill each other. And it's the closest thing to what we used to have.
Right. I'm going to wrap this episode up so that Mark doesn't look like any more of a sociopath. I think that everybody needs to reset.
We're soft, man. We're soft as human beings nowadays, right?
We need to start sacrificing people more often.
No, not sacrificing, letting them fight to the death and paying them millions of dollars.
That's a sacrifice.
No, that's their choice. We're not forcing them to do it.
Okay.
I'm not saying sacrifice. Force people to do it. Yeah, people would do it voluntarily if it became like a legal thing. I guarantee it. For the right amount of money.
Some movie about like people trying to like, was it
The Hunger Games? The Hunger Games would be sick. Like let's make that real.
trying to get out of like prison and like you have to like fight to the death in this tournament to get out of prison. I thought there was some movie
That'd be
about
sick
that.
too. I mean,
It's a plot. Let's set up Christopher Nolan with that movie plot. I think he could probably run with that.
All I'm saying is, let's not make the things that we love and the reasons we love them. Let's not take those reasons away. Let's not pretend. Let's not try to put a dress on a tiger.
Yeah, that's a dress on a tiger. Actually, that should be the episode title. Let's put a dress on a tiger.
Let's not put a dress on a tiger. You know what I mean? Let's not put a muzzle.
I agree with you. I agree with you. You're just scaring me a little bit at this point.
Yeah, I'm sure listeners are scared too. Listen, I'm not insane. I like good old fashioned football. I like good old fashioned NBA. And
fights to the death.
I like the movie Gladiator. Sue me. Yeah, I like the movie Gladiator. Sue me. It would be kind of cool to see it in real life. I liked Game of Thrones. Sue me.
All right. With that, I think that's all we have to talk about. I think this is a really good off-season May nothing to talk about episode. Frankly, I think we did a
Besides
really good
the ACT slip up, I think I was on my A game today.
Yeah, and now that's cursed for the rest of the time until you take
I didn't do myself any favors.
Yep. So we will see you guys next week, and be on the lookout for some fresh reminders for Mark to take the ACT. We will see you guys then. Peace.
See you guys.